Welcome to another tax resolution training video from taxmarketinghq.com.
Most sections of the IRM start with a program scope section. This addresses who the intended audience of that IRM section is. It explains who has authority over maintaining that section of the IRM and some other kind of preliminary but still important information. Most of the items that we will talk about throughout this entire Inside the IRM topic series over the entire course of this year will be items that are targeted primarily at revenue officers that work across the country in field collection. So these are the revenue officers that are out knocking on doors, verifying assets, and shaking people down for money face-to-face in person rather than over the phone or from the comfort of a cushy air-conditioned office at a service center. Even though this is the very first part of the collections IRM, the very first section of part 5 of the IRM, which is all about collections, it actually contains sort of a hodgepodge of miscellaneous collection procedures that don't fit anywhere else. And this didn't used to be the case. With this update to the IRM, they did a pretty significant rewrite and rearrangement of many sections of Part 5 in 2018 that tried to organize things in a more logical manner, grouping things together in a more logical manner for the use by the revenue officer to make things that were necessary to find, making them easier to find. Okay, but one of the things that did away with, ironically, was it took away what used to be in the old version of the IRM, this really nice, easy to read, easy to follow, high-level introductory overview to collections casework processes that used to be in section 5.1.1. Those were individual sections were actually regrouped in completely different places. And so this kind of introductory workflow section of the IRM is gone. And you can still find some old copies of it online if you want to kind of look through a kind of the Wayback Machine and see what it used to look like. So it is kind of ironic that this first section of Part 5 of the IRM contains actually a lot of miscellaneous stuff. It's no longer this nice logical thing that it used to be. So there's actually quite a bit of material within this particular section of the IRM that you don't need to know. For example, almost half of this entire section of the IRM is step-by-step procedures for explaining to revenue officers how to use specific functions within the integrated data retrieval system. Okay, and that's not something we need to know, right? But there are still valuable tidbits that can be gathered throughout this section of the IRM. Probably one of the biggest is the acronym list. This is where the generic big picture acronym list for items related to collection exists. And when we've done other webinars and live seminars, conferences, boot camps, I didn't used to provide an acronym list, but we now do because acronyms are, it's part of the reality of doing business with the government, and there are a lot of them. So I know that for some of you, this might sound overly simplistic, and perhaps you might even consider it a waste of time. But we are going to spend a few minutes here and go through not the entire acronym list from this section of the IRM, but we are going to go through I listed out probably about half of them that I thought were worth talking about. So first of all, there is ACS. These are just alphabetical, by the way. So ACS, Automated Collection System. ACS is the division of the IRS that operates the collection call centers. So when you have a client with a balance due that has not yet been assigned to a revenue officer, and you're making a phone call to talk to somebody about the case, you're talking to an ACS person. ACS also refers to the computer system that those personnel use in order to look up case items, send out notices, things like that. Through the ACS system, you'll see notices that come out to your client that start with a CP. So CP 501, CP 502, 503, 504, etc. Anything with a CP is generated in an automated system. I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe CP stands for computer printout or computer protocol or something like that. But CP notices are automatically generated notices through ACS. ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. Basically, this is a mediation program that is functionally operated by appeals that allows for resolution of some tax controversy cases. In situations, in specific situations, they're always running a variety of mediation pilot programs, and ADR is the acronym that describes, as a group, those mediation programs. BAL due is balance due, as in the total liability that the taxpayer owes. BMF, Business Master File. This is the IRS computer database system that includes all of the information about businesses. The IMF, the Individual Master File, is obviously the database on the 1040 side. CAP, Collection Appeal Program. The CAP program, using IRS Form 9423, this is the standard vehicle that you'll use for a lot of your appeals processes. In particular, the thing you'll use it for most is this is what you'll file in order to get a levy released. CC is closing code. Every time the IRS closes out a case, they have to enter into the computer a case closure code. These closure codes don't really mean a whole lot to us because we're not living inside their little computer land, but it is important that if you have reached a resolution with the IRS, that the case closure code that's entered into the computer by the revenue officer or ACS personnel actually matches what you negotiated, right? So the case closure codes actually can be important and should be verified. CDP is Collection Due Process Appeal. This is the appeal rights that come with your final notice of intent to levy. You could also file CDPs on liens and a few other actions. CDPs are nice because they stop the collection process. CLO, Centralized Lien Operation. This is the division within the IRS that maintains the internal lien database. It is also the division that sends out the Form 668Y, Notice of Federal Tax Lien, to your Secretary of State or County Clerk and Recorder in order to perfect the IRS's statutory lien at the local level. CNC, currently not collectible. DELRET, Delinquent Return, an unfiled return. I assume most of you know what an EIN is, Employer Identification Number. EPMF, Employee Plans Master File. There is an entire division within the IRS that obviously is responsible for enforcement and other actions on employee plans. So much like the BMF or the IMF, these employee plans are treated as entities unto their own right with their respective enforcement division within the IRS and their own database. FC is field collection, meaning the revenue officers, their managers, and their support personnel that are smattered across the country working in collections. FTM, Fast Track Mediation, that's another appeals program for special circumstances. GM, Group Manager, that is the revenue officer's boss. IDRS, Integrated Data Retrieval System. This is the IRS's core computer system layer that it sits on top of a lot of these other computer systems that we talk about. And it is a modern, basically what it is it's a modern or semi-modern system for retrieving information from what are basically much more archaic database systems is what it is. ITIN, Individual Taxpayer ID Number. LBNI, Large Business and International. If your client is big enough, or if they're a foreign entity, then you'll be working with LBNI. MFT, Master File Transaction. You'll see a lot of reference in the IRM to MFT codes. And most of these you don't need to know, but over time you will learn to recognize certain MFT codes. These are the codes that when you look at a transcript, they're the code that's in the far left-hand column of a transcript. So you will come to recognize those, and as you do transcript analysis, there are some that you will intentionally be on the lookout for. NFTL, Notice of Federal Tax Lien. This is the actual locally filed tax lien. Less than 5% of taxpayers have one of these filed on them. But this is the local tax lien that perfects the statutory tax lien. OIC, Offer and Compromise. PII, Personally Identifiable Information. This is something that you're seeing more and more as part of the security awareness aspect of things within the IRS. POA, Power of Attorney, that references the Form 2848. RA is Revenue Agent. Revenue agents, they work on the examination side. These are the IRS's auditors. Revenue officers are the personnel that work in collections. So a lot of practitioners get the two or use the two interchangeably. They are very different jobs. They're very different career track for IRS personnel. SBSE, Small Business Self-Employed Division. This is the division of the IRS that most revenue officers are actually under because this is where the majority of collections activity happens. SRP is Shared Responsibility Payment. As of about a year ago now, this is a new enforcement area, a pretty aggressive enforcement area within the IRS, going after applicable large employers with more than 50 FTE that are not providing health insurance for their employees. And so the employer shared responsibility payment is a big enforcement area. TAS, Taxpayer Advocate Service. I'm sure most of you know who they are. TBOR, Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Transaction codes. Similar to master file transactions, MFT codes generally refer to a tax type. Transaction codes refer to a change in status of some sort. TE is Tax Examiner. TEGE, Tax Exempt and Government Entities Division. This is similar to LB&I and SBSE. It's just another division within the IRS that has their own staff. And this is the enforcement division, basically, that works with nonprofits and government entities. TFRP is the Trust Fund Recovery Penalty. It should say IRC 6672. It's a typo. TIN, taxpayer ID number, and TPC, third party contact. Whew, it's a lot of acronyms. Okay. Hopefully there were some in there that you either were not familiar with or that you weren't exactly sure what they were.
Thanks for watching. For more tax resolution resources, visit taxmarketinghq.com.